time. So let's go ahead and get started. Madeline, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and we'll just start on.
Hi, everybody. My name is Madeline Milner, and I work for the Natural Resource Conservation Service. I'm a rangeland management specialist, and I've been volunteering with the California Envirothon competition for probably the last 3 or 4 years. If you were there in 2019 or 2018, you might have seen me as a judge or possibly keeping time. And you might remember Philip Dixon from back then, but happy to be here. Glad to see that you guys are participating in the virtual event, and then hopefully next year we can get back to normal.
Right, very good. So, all right, so Madeline is going to conduct the seminar, the webinar in 2 weeks from today. I'm going to do this one. So we're working together, and so I've put together this PowerPoint that you see on your screen, and we'll roll through it. And then in 2 weeks, you're going to have a shorter session if you care to join Madeline, which I highly recommend. She's going to do sample test questions. And, that'll be a good opportunity for you guys to take what you've learned and apply it and just get some feedback from her about what's going on. So, all right. So,
hey, Diane.
Yeah.
Before we get rolling, you might want to introduce yourself.
I was going to, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Chris. I work for Diane, and I run Zoom meetings for her.
Amongst other things,
amongst other things, yes.
Yes, multitasker. He's one of our crew at the events that we run, and I'll tell you about that at the end of our time today. But he's been part of the team for a couple of years now, 3 years or so. So anyway, so yes, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Diane Dealey-Neal. I worked with Envirothon. I was a RCD employee back in the 90s, and I worked with Envirothon from 1992 until 2001. Both in Florida and California. And in 2002, I decided to start my own program that was based on the Envirothon called the Forestry Challenge. And I've been running that program ever since. And of course, happy to be here today and hopeful that Steve, you will be interested then in perhaps participating in the Forestry Challenge, which we have 4 events throughout the state and they're in the fall. So I'll talk about that more later. But I've been doing forestry education now for 20 years or so. And so hopefully we'll be able to walk you through this and make it understandable and fun. So, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let me just come over here and go to my next slide. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna roll through this as fast as we can. So you guys are definitely gonna be aware of time, so you're not here past noon. We're going to talk, in fact, Maddie's going to help me talk about the Envirothon website and forestry resources page, so you know where to find information. Then we're going to dive into the topics to cover today. And we're basically covering everything that we want you to know for the test. This is your foundation for the test, this information. We're going to talk about the public land survey system, tree identification, tree physiology, crown classes, tree measurement, volume units, geographic features, the carbon cycle, fire, and management silviculture. There's a lot to take in. You guys do have 4 topics that you need to cover for your test. I understand that we have to try to streamline this so you're not learning things you don't need to know. We don't want you to know. We don't care if you know. So all this information is stuff you'll need to know for the forestry test. So I'm going to hand it over to Madeline then to talk about the website and what to take from that.
Okay, and please feel free to jump in if I miss something. Luckily I've been out working outside in the sun all week, so my brain's a little cooked today. So what we're showing you right now is the website where we post the resources that are meant for you to study for the competition. Some of you are probably familiar with it. Steve, you definitely are. We have been doing a lot of editing to it lately because we wanted to streamline it and make it simpler for you guys to read for this virtual event. And I am going to get a little closer so that I can see the slides. And so I am looking at like screenshots of it. So in here, you'll find links to study materials. And then there's also going to be a section of some additional information. So we're going to do as best we can to let you know what you need to study and what you don't need to study. I plan on following up with you guys after this if the website is still getting updated as we prepare for the final test writing and for the actual competition itself. So you can always reach out to me and I'll try to make sure that you know exactly what resources that you need for the day of, but you know, when in doubt, look back at these, the topics that we outline on the PowerPoint. And I'm going to go ahead and say, Dan, from what I can see is just like some shots of the website. So I'm not sure what else to go into, anything I'm missing.
Well, I think we agree, because I just got involved with this a few weeks ago or a week ago or something, and Madeline's, you know, she's been involved to some degree, but what we're going to tell you, you guys see that middle shot where it says forestry key points? Everybody see that?
Oh, excuse me, I couldn't quite read them.
Ignore it.
Yes.
Ignore it. It really shouldn't even be there. It's nice. Those are nice things to know, but basically what we agreed on, that's the culmination of an entire forestry degree. Do not bother yourself with trying to figure all that stuff out. Instead, what you need to focus on is the bottom part of that screen where it says study resources for the forestry test. And that is our condensed list of things you need to know. And I'm going to condense it even farther today. So honestly, if you study this PowerPoint and you watch the things that I've linked in it, you're good to go. Just don't worry about it. Go study the other stuff. Don't worry about forestry. We're going to make this simple. So yeah, that's the key takeaway here where it says forestry key points, ignore. Forestry study resources for the forestry test. That's the part to pay attention to. Okay, so any questions?
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah. Any questions about that slide? Anybody? And you'll see it on the website. I didn't want to do a live demo of the website, but you'll see it. If you hover over study materials, it drops down, click on forestry, you'll get to that page that's screenshotted on the bottom. Okay, so that's our key, that's our takeaway there. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the topics. The first topic we want to make sure you guys know that you need to be working with is the public land survey system. So it's basically a grid laid over the earth, and it's used so that you can figure out where something is, and it's not just go down the road, take a ride at the tree. It's a legal description, and everything is based on what you guys see on the right side of your screen here, which looks like an XY graph, just a standard graph. That's kind of how the whole system's organized. So there's townships and ranges. Those are the north, south, and east, west. You know, references from the base of the meridian, which is kind of the 0, 0 point. And then each of those is divided into 36 1-mile square sections. So each one of those is a town or is a section. Okay, no, it's a township. Don't worry about it. I'm going to show you a video I'm going to link a video that's going to explain it. I'm just going to go on to the next slide. As you get smaller and smaller on the grids, you get different ways of dividing things. So you'll see on the left graphic where it says section 14, that's important to know, that west half of the southeast quarter, blah, blah, blah. Those, understanding how to describe a piece within a section is extremely important. You will be tested on that. So I'm going to give you a couple of links to videos. This dude on the left, it's a homemade video, and I kind of laughed at it when I first saw it, but actually he does a really good job of describing how to find something about a mining claim. So he talks about the northwest section of the, you know, corner of the southeast, whatever. So he goes through an example that I think is really useful. That's a 7-minute video, so it's not too long to watch, so I highly recommend that. The other one, these are all linked in the PDF that you're going to get. So what you'll do is you'll just hover. You'll hover over this. Actually, this is a PowerPoint. When you get to the PDF, if you just hover over the image and you right-click, it'll say, take me to that in the browser. And that's all you need to do to watch the video. You guys probably already know that. So I'd suggest watching that video because in 7.5 minutes, you're going to get a pretty good idea of what those previous 2 slides were talking about. The other one on the right side has more of a historical, like why the system was created and who created it. But it does have some good information, and I think it's 7 or 8 minutes, so it's not very long. So I would just say sit down and watch those 2 videos. If you understand graphing and squares and south, and you know your directions, north, south, east, west, you're going to be fine with this. Okay? Any questions about the public land survey system? Let's move on. Let's see. Over here. Okay, next topic, tree identification. There's a gazillion trees in California. And we're only going to ask you to know 8 of them. And again, there's all those sources you have on the website and blah, blah, blah. 8 trees, done. So you do need to know our 8 plants. I guess a white manzanita, I don't know if it's really called a tree, but you need to know the common and the scientific name for each. When you write those on your test is going to be a fillable PDF. Be sure to capitalize the genus name and do not capitalize the species name. And please get the spelling right, especially white fur is not F-U-R, it's F-I-R. So please make sure you do that. And then I don't know if anybody knows why Douglas fir and incense cedar have a hyphen and the words fir and cedar are not capitalized. Anybody? Anybody? Chris, Cameron? Don't know? Okay. It's because they're not really fir. Douglas fir is not really a fir, and incense cedar is not really a cedar. So Douglas fir, the scientific name is Pseudotsuga. So pseudo meaning fake. So they're not really firs and cedars. So you can't capitalize that word. It's not correct. So try to remember. I don't know if we'll give you full credit if you don't put the hyphen in the lowercase letter on that common name. But try to remember to do that. That's important. So it's a kind of a minor point, but it is a real thing. Ponderosa pine and sugar pine, they're pines, they're really pines. White fir is really a fir. You know, then you've got an oak and a redwood and a manzanita, which are pines. So one thing that would be nice for you guys to kind of understand is which ones are broadleaves, which ones are conifers, which ones are the pines. There's a characteristic of pines. The needles are in bundles. In fir and cedar, and even the Douglas fir, they are not. Coastal redwood kind of looks like fir. It's got that single needle coming out of the stem or out of the stem. But coastal redwood needles are much thinner, they're much shorter. White fir needles are longer. And then you'll be provided with not only a picture of the foliage up close, but a picture of the tree. So just go to your website. You'll see links to all those plants. You'll look at them, make sure you know what they look like and their names. And there's 8, and that is it. We will not do a key plant, any key ID. It's more than we need to do right now. So just know those 8 plants and you're good to go. Any questions about those plants, plant ID? Okay, you guys are awfully quiet. Hopefully you already know all this stuff. Okay, tree physiology can be summarized in 2 videos. One of them is 1 minute and 48 seconds. The other is 2 minutes and 8 seconds. So in less than 5 minutes, you will understand these 3 things. This is all we want you to know. We don't want you to have to write down chemical reactions or do all the details. We just want you to understand the difference between them. What parts of the tree are involved in these different processes and how they're different from each other. That's it, okay? Any questions on physiology? Okay, this is all basic biology stuff. Okay, crown classes. All right, so we are going to want you to know, if you're looking at a stand in the forest, the difference between the trees, and this has to do with competition. Trees compete with each other. Some are winners, some are not. And so there's 4 different ways to describe the tree's position in the canopy. And you see with the graphic below, you've got dominant with the D. Those are the tallest trees that have reached the sunlight and are basically, you know, just taking the majority of the sunlight and the resource. C is codominant, and sometimes you can have 2 codominant trees next to each other if they're near each other at the same height, but they're not far above the canopy, then they're codominants. Intermediate, just like it sounds, they're just kind of sort of tall, not really short. And then the suppressed ones are the little tiny ones underneath, completely underneath the canopy of the dominant trees. So you may get a question about that. You may get a graphic, you may get a photograph. You'll have to identify the different canopy positions of these trees. So question, are dead trees counted in this kind of situation? Any ideas on that? Crickets. Come on, you guys, you know the answer to this. Cameron, Chris? How about you, Steve?
I was going to guess no, but I'm not sure.
No, they're not. Basically, dead trees are not part of surveys, live cruises, unless you have a question in your protocol asking you, are there dead trees? Does anybody know the name for a dead tree, what we call them? Cameron. Boy, maybe they walked away. Can't even see them. Any ideas? Steve?
Snag?
Snags, that's right, that's important. So dead trees are called snags, and we generally, if we're gonna quantify them, it's separate from the live trees that we're cruising. Okay, all right, yeah.
About that diagram on the bottom. So does it matter when you're talking about crown classes about whether these are the same species competing against different species or the same species competing against, brothers and sisters?
No, it's like every single one of those trees could be different species in random fashion. If you have a mixed conifer stand, you could have a dominant white firs, and right next to it could be, or down the road could be a dominant ponderosa pine. Sometimes I will say that sometimes trees like white fir and incense cedar, they are shade tolerant, so they'll grow up under the canopy and they'll survive. So sometimes although you can see suppressed pines too, because they need full sunlight. So if they're trying to compete and they don't have any sunlight, they're going to be stunted and suppressed. And this is not an indication of the age of the tree. So the dominant trees are not necessarily the oldest trees, and the suppressed trees are not necessarily the youngest trees. In fact, the opposite can be true, or they can all be the same age. But if you have a bunch of trees competing for sunlight, some are just going to outcompete the others. So be any species, anything. Yeah, good question. Good question. I'm not going to go through these definitions. It would be important for you to read those and kind of understand the difference between them. But you guys can read, so I'm not gonna waste your time with that. So are we good? Good to go? Okay. Okay, tree measurement. So there's only 3 tools that you need to know how to use: a diameter tape, clinometer, and a wedge prism. So each of these images, you can see as I hover over this, it's a link to a YouTube video. There's a link to a YouTube video, and there's a link to a YouTube video. This dude is awesome. He's a associate professor, extension forestry, Washington State. I've never met the guy, but he got one of our t-shirts last year because he was super helpful. He made this whole series of videos on, they're for small forest landowners. Like, let's say you and your family own 40 acres and you want to collect some information. So he created these 2-minute videos that show these people how to use the tools that are really nice. They're just concise, they're introductory, very easy to understand. So they had been removed from being online, and he posted them all back for us last fall. So I would highly recommend you watch each one of those. Each one of those is 2 minutes, and it shows you how to use the tool. So these are 3 basic measurements that you would need in the forest. You guys aren't jumping in with answers, so I'm just going to tell you the diameter tape is used to measure the girth of the tree at 4.5 feet above the ground. He goes through that in the video. The clinometer is used to measure the height of the tree using angles, and there's a sort of a self-writing leveler inside the tool, inside the clinometer, and then it'll show you how to use that. And then the little glass thing, it's tiny, it's only about this big. I should have brought one to show you guys on screen. It's called a wedge prism, and it's used to calculate basal area. And I'm going to show you both clinometer and the wedge prism, how to use them in the next few slides. The diameter tape is pretty straightforward, and if you've seen the video, you're going to know how to use that. You will be tested on all 3 of these tools. All right. Next slide. Okay, so we're not going to worry about diameter. And the tape he'll explain is one side of the tape is adjusted for pi. So if you wrap it around the tree, it will give you the cross-section diameter. So that's pretty easy. One thing to keep in mind for the clinometer is your eye. You hold the tool to your eye, and then you look at the bottom of the tree and the top of the tree. If you see the graphic on the left, I apologize, it's a little bit cloudy. Actually, let's do the graphic on the right first. So you would stand a set distance away from the tree. A standard distance for a clinometer is 100 feet. And you find level. So you'll see inside the tool, there are numbers. It looks like a thermometer. One side is set up for percent or 100%. The other side is set up for a distance of 66 feet or a chain. Anyway, you find level where it says 0. And then you tip your head back and you line it up at the top of the tree, and you'll see a number inside the tool. And you remember that number. In this case, it's 90. If you tip your head down, let's say the tree is below you, the bottom of it's below you, and this is all the way to the ground, this is not to 4.5 feet, you'll see a negative reading. Now, if you see both positive and negative, if your level hits the tree, above the ground, you've got to add those 2 together. So what would the height of this tree be if you're at 100 feet? Go ahead, Steve, jump in.
95.
Yay, you add the two. Even though one of those numbers is a negative reading, it's just because it's below 0. So you would add those together. Now, looking at the graphic on the left, if you're standing below the tree and you get a 100-foot reading, the same tree, because it's going to come out the same, if your clinometer says 100 as you look through it, as you look up, and then it's still positive 5 when you're looking at the base of the tree, level is below the ground. So in that case, you would subtract the 5 from the 100, you would still get 95. Now, the percent scale on a clinometer is really cool because if you can't see the tree from 100 feet, or if it's really small and you don't need to get back that far, you could stand at 50 feet. And if you got those readings, you would just divide them by 2. So if that tree is 95 feet, but you get that on your readings, but you're only standing 50 feet away from the tree, it's really not that tall. It's half that tall. Conversely, if it's a huge tree or you can't see it, you can only see it from a distance. Let's say you get 100, 150 or 200, you got 200 feet away, and you got that 90 and that 5, and you added them, and you got 95. You would multiply that by 2 because that tree's really bigger than your tool is showing you because you're twice the distance. So, I mean, I've watched foresters do this. They'll just stand there, any spot they can see the tree. They'll take their measurements. They'll measure from where they're standing back to the tree. And if it's 110 feet, they'll multiply their values by 1.1. If it's 78 feet, they'll multiply by 0.78. So that percent scale is super useful if you're in a situation where you can't see the tree except, say, from one spot, and it's not at 100 feet. So that is definitely important for the test. Now, understanding how that tool works and using the percent scale, you can stand any distance away that you want. As long as you account for that and factor it in, you get the right answer. Okay, any questions about clinometers? All right, moving right along, let's go to basal area. Those things out there. Okay, so what the top graphic shows is, and you'll see this in the video, what you do with that prism is you hold it over a plot center. And we're not even going to get into cruising. We do that at Forestry Challenge, but we don't have time for it. So if you're trying to establish what the basal area is, you would hold this piece of glass, it's wedged, over a point, and you would go around it and hold it still and look at every tree. So you're looking out through the forest, and let's see, you've got these 3 trees here. And your glass, well, that's actually an angle gauge. I apologize for that. But what the glass does is it offsets the image. The tree trunk, it looks like it's going straight, but then it's set to the side. So if you look through that glass and that tree trunk has only slid part way and not completely outside its own boundaries, you count the tree as in. And bear with me here. If it's beyond itself, it's out. So if you look at the red graphic, the red and blue graphic, the blue trees are in because it has not offset itself. The red trees are out. And that's using an angle gauge. I apologize for that. That was a last minute addition. I lay awake in the middle of the night thinking about how to explain this better. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to scan around in a circle and count how many trees are in. And then you multiply the number of in trees by how fat the prism is, how big of the wedge is. That's called the basal area factor. We'll show you an example of this next week. Probably using an angle gauge. I'm not sure about that. Or actually, I've got one using a wedge prism. We'll show you a video of it, and Madeline will go through how to calculate it with you, and then we'll be asking.
It's week after next.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks from today. Sorry about that. Yes.
No problem.
So I have a video of me using one of these tools, and you'll see it in the video that Kevin made. So hopefully by the time you see this enough, I'm sorry you won't get your hands on this tool, but you'll be able to figure it out. Now, just to show you the bottom graphic, what basal area is measuring is the square footage of the cut stumps over the acre of land. So if you see all those little brown spots there, let's say that this little brown spot right here is 2 square feet. If you were to make it square, it would be 2 square feet. You know, and this one's 3, and this one's 2, and this one's 1.5. That's half. You added all those up over an acre of forest. The addition of all those square footages is the basal area. So generally, we're looking at numbers anywhere between 100 square feet per acre and 300 square feet per acre. And the law is written so that you have to abide by certain, not cutting below certain numbers. There's all kinds of those numbers are extremely important in the law and in the prescriptions that foresters write. they use that number. They aren't looking necessarily at how many trees per acre, they're looking at the basal area per acre. Because you could have 100 trees on your acre, and each one could be 1 square foot, which is about 14 inches. If you squish that square, it would be a square foot. You would have 100 square feet. Or you could have, I don't know, 20 trees, and each one 5 square feet, which would be big, okay? And you'd have the same basal area. So basal area is a nice standard way to quantify a forest that's not based on the number of trees. Okay, so it's a tough concept to understand, but it's a very important one. That's why we decided to include it. So anyway, that's basal area. Watch the video. Madeline will go through some examples next week to help you understand how to calculate that. If you come to Forestry Challenge, you'll be an expert, right, Cameron? All right, let's move on. So once you know the height of a tree and the diameter, there's ways to figure out what the volume of wood is inside of it. And the standard measurement is called a board foot. And it's this tile, right? It's like a tile. It's 12 by 12 by 1 inch thick. That's 1 board foot. Now, when you're measuring volumes of lumber, it may be that you have a 2 by 6 and not a 1 by 12. And that's fine. It's the volume. It doesn't matter what shape it's in. It's that amount, which is 144 cubic inches. So oftentimes at Forestry Challenge, I'll give people a piece of cut wood that's, 6 feet long and it's 2 inches by 6 inches. Well, that will be 6 board feet. You have to figure out how many board feet that is. So yeah, it doesn't matter what shape it comes in. It's a volume measurement, kind of like pouring liquid into a container. I should say that's ounces, but anyway, it doesn't matter what the outside dimensions are. It's what's contained inside. Now you can take that. Of course, a board foot. If you had 12 board feet stacked up, you would have a cubic foot. Sometimes lumber is measured in cubic feet, and even metrics. They'll do, I don't know, cubic something else. I don't operate in that world, but in other parts of the world, they'll use metric measurements for volume. If you are looking at a cord of wood, that's 128 cubic feet. Generally, it's a pile that's 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet. Well, it could be something different. If it adds up to 128, it's a cord, and that's how firewood is sold. And generally, that's how, for firewood uses, not for lumber mills. But that's an important thing to know. And then MBF is 1,000 board feet. So the Roman numeral M means 1,000. So MBF is 1,000, and that's generally how, when you start doing big trees and logs and putting them on trucks and sending them to lumber mills, you're not going to think in board feet. You're going to think in 1,000 board feet. So, and then we'll go over it next time. I didn't have a chance to really dive into this because I don't use it, but there's a million board feet. Right? Is that MM maybe? I don't know, 1,000, probably a million. Anyway, yeah, anything that we're testing you on, we will make sure we cover today and next time. So we'll make sure we cover that, and we'll go over some examples. Okay, so that's just a way to measure volume of wood. All right, let's see, next slide. Geographic features. We're getting close to the end here, guys, and it's 10:37. So you need to be familiar with these terms: slope, aspect, and topography. So I thought it would be a good idea to just show you a map and show you some differences in slope, aspect, and topography so that you can understand what those terms mean. We are not going to test you on maps per se, like reading the legends of maps or using them somehow, but we may use them to ask you about something. So you kind of need to know a little bit about maps, not everything, but I'm using this as an example to explain slope, aspect, and topography. So slope is simply how steep the landscape is. And on a topographic map, these are shown by the contour lines. So those lines are level. So it's like taking a potato and slicing it. So every time you slice it, there's a line. And you see the top of this Mount Marcy has got a line, they've got lines around it that are concentric. So each one is lower and lower. So that's the top of the mountain, and just think of that potato, and every time you slice it, there's a line where the cut is. There's a line on the map. So it's not a perfectly round potato. You can see that over on the one side here, over here, there's a flank, okay? And I think I might have put this as a video. There is a video on this. It's more than you guys need to know, I think. So I'm not sure why there's a link there, but if there is, go for it. So you can see this is like a flank on the mountain. So the mountain has sort of a ridge going down one side. because it's got that shape to it. Okay, so slope, you can see that's the top of the mountain and it goes down, and you see down here the lines are really close together. And what that means is it's steeper. So the closer together the lines, the steeper the slope. Okay, down here is a valley. And the reason I know that, it's flat because the lines are far apart. So you guys need to understand slope, the steepness of the ground. Okay, aspect. Aspect is the direction that the slope is facing. So here's Mount Marcy, and north is up. So this is the north aspect. So it's a north-facing slope. This is the south aspect, and so on, the west and the east. Okay, so there are differences in the kind of vegetation that's going to grow on different sides or different aspects based on sunshine. So in the northern hemisphere, we get more sun on the south side than we do on the north. So the north side of Mount Marcy might have entirely different vegetation than the south side of Mount Marcy. And it will have to do with slope too. Some plants don't do well as steep slopes as others. But aspect is certainly important. Generally, firs like darker, wetter slopes. So they're going to be on the north-facing slope or the north aspect. Pines generally like drier, can tolerate drier conditions and sunnier conditions. So you might find them on the south side. So species mix will be different. And, you know, of course, if you're managing a forest, you need to be aware of this because you want to grow things that are going to have success. Okay. And then topography is another important part of understanding landscapes. And so you see down here, there's something gorge. So that is a waterway right there. So that's a creek. And one question that you might be asked is, which way is the water flowing? Is it flowing north or is it flowing south? You guys aren't seeming to jump in and answer these questions, so I'm just going to roll through this. This creek is flowing south, and the reason I know that is I see that these contour lines point uphill, okay, because they're on the flat and the creek is flowing downhill. So this creek is flowing north to south. This one is flowing from here, from the east towards the west. And I can see that because the contour lines point upstream. So that gives you a sense of where the water, which direction the water is going. Now, in these parts near creeks and waterways, we call those riparian zones because the vegetation is different at the bottom where there's less sunshine and more water than they are on the tops and on ridges. And especially right near creeks, you'll have an entirely different kind of vegetation called riparian vegetation or riparian zone. So where you may have a forest that's full of pine trees and maybe some firs, if you get right along the waterway, you're going to find oftentimes broadleaf plants, you know, big leaf maple, depends on where you are, different broadleaf species. In the redwoods, you'll find, you know, big leaf maple, of course, and some other types of plants. So it's kind of a special zone because the vegetation there right along that waterway is going to be different than it is on the rest of the landscape. So it has to do with mostly with water, but also with shade. Okay, so the broadleaf plants will grow down there because their leaves are designed to capture as much sunlight as they can. You know, the pines are more hardy. They've got the waxy needles and aren't designed to capture maximum sunshine. They're more in sunny places. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how the landscape is, the forest is affected by slope aspect and topography, and that riparian zone concept is also important. Okay, if you guys have questions, jump in. Yes.
So on riparian zones, obviously, you know, you have different topography and all that. Is there some standard way of knowing? So, okay, I'm by a stream, I'm in a riparian zone, and now I'm walking away from the stream. How do I know that I've left the riparian zone? Am I just looking at a change in the types of plants, or is there some other way of knowing, like I now have left?
There's three things. Go ahead, madam.
I was going to chip in because I have been getting a lot of education from biologists on that lately. And if I miss anything, of course, Diane, please supplement it. But something that I've been told is that a distinction between a riparian zone is the presence of plants that require like water or moisture soils. So if you're moving away from the riparian zone and then you see those sort of water dependent species like willows, sedges, rushes start to, you know, go away. And then especially if the soil moisture content starts to change, a lot of times you'll see a change in soil texture, then you've probably exited you've gotten out of what would be considered a riparian zone.
So mostly the plants, but maybe also water content in the soil.
Water content in the soil, water table, yeah.
So, and a little off topic, but 3 things that determine wetlands. I remember this from my old Envirothon days. Hydrology, again, water in the soil, water on the surface. Hydrophytic vegetation, you know, the plants that like lots of water, and hydrophobic, the soil, the actual soil type. So the soils that have
It has to be
hydric soils,
hydrophobic means it rejects
in 20
water.
some years, hydric soils mean soils that are water saturated, and they'll often have a bluish, grayish tint to them because the minerals in them are not oxidized because they're saturated. So you'll find some funky colors down, you know, in the soils, depending on what kind of minerals you start with. You'll find sort of bluish grayish soil. When you get upslope, you'll find soils that have oxygen, so they're more oxidized, so you'll find more reddish, yellowish colors. That's very much a generality, but it's pretty clear to see. I mean, there's not an exact line that goes between the, you know, the riparian vegetation and the upland vegetation. It's not exact, but sometimes it can be pretty sharp. I mean, within about 15 or 20 feet, you're going to see one kind of plant over here, another kind over here. So, and it depends on the slope too. Think about it. If you've got a super steep slope, that line is going to be maybe more defined than if it's a flat, you know, sort of broad riparian zone.
Right.
Okay. So yeah.
And I'd actually add in, just, you know, while we're discussing, just to help you guys kind of supplement the total picture, I was in a really beautiful riparian zone yesterday, and it happened to, even though the stream itself went through a very far distance along the property, the true riparian zone actually was almost neatly isolated in a canyon. So with between sort of like the different geography and then the presence of more water than there was anywhere else on the property, you'll also notice like you're sort of in a microclimate. Usually humidity is a little bit higher. Grasses and things that have dried out everywhere else are still green because there's just sort of like, it's a few degrees cooler. It's a little bit more moist. And just like Diane said, as soon as we kind of turned out of the canyon, even though we were following the stream, a true riparian zone, we knew exactly, we exited it very neatly. So it's very interesting to sort of watch the progress, you know, of where riparian zones can actually exist along a water source.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a free flowing stream. It could be some sort of a spring. It could be a spring that doesn't go anywhere, just a spot. It could be a round spot, you know, if it's just a spot where water is coming up to the surface and provides that necessary moisture for those species. It doesn't have to flow anywhere. So it's
it could not flow all year either. Like right now, a very dry year, there's going to be some springs, rivers, streams, etc., that you actually almost could see no moisture, but the riparian zone exists as long as the soil is staying wet enough to sustain the plants. And then obviously over time, an extended period of drought, you'd see the habitat of the riparian areas start to change, but you can have seasonality to it as well, but it continues to be a riparian zone.
So that's probably way more than you need to know, but it's good information.
Yeah, if you like wildlife biology, you'll learn a lot about riparian zones one day.
And those areas are protected by the law in harvesting and forest management. They have to be protected. And there's certain standards that apply to a riparian zone or stream and water course, a WILPAS, water and lake protection zone. And they actually have to be flagged. And there's different harvesting standards. Oftentimes you can't roll equipment into them. There's just all kinds of things that are done to protect those. Very different. Okay, we don't have much time left. Let's go ahead and move along. We just have a few more slides here. Carbon cycle is important. And I'm just gonna, this is a graphic you guys will have access to. I would say this, if you look at these 2 graphics and you understand them, that's probably all you need to know about carbon sequestration. Sustainable forestry does positively impact carbon sequestration. Trees suck up carbon out of the air through photosynthesis. They store it in their wood. And then if you have a piece of wood that's say 10 pounds, that's 5 pounds of carbon. Approximately half is carbon. A lot of carbon in wood. And an actively growing forest will suck up carbon faster than an old decadent forest. So you can see that graphic there. Old forests release, and they can actually get to the point where they release more than they bring in. So another reason to manage forests for carbon sequestration. And then there's all kinds of things that wood can be used for. And if the tree is cut down and the wood is hauled away and made into a 2x4 for your house, the carbon's still there. It's still sequestered. It doesn't get released until it burns or rots. Anyway, you can see here the graphic on the right. There's processes in the forest that release carbon, and there's some that that bring it back. And of course, unhealthy forests can release more than they store, than they suck in. A fire absolutely releases more. And then even after the fire, as those dead trees fall to the ground and start rotting, they release carbon. And then the thing that sucks it back in is when you grow stuff, grasses and shrubs, but also trees. Trees take in significantly more carbon than brush. So that's another reason that if you're thinking about carbon, you might want to plant trees after a fire rather than just letting the brush take them. So anyway, that's a very brief overview of carbon. That's probably all you need to know. Okay, fire, big deal in California. Just a couple things to show you here, the fire triangle and the fire behavior triangle. What's in common? What can we control? Fuel. So if you're trying to affect fire behavior or manage your forest for fire safety, fuel is the one thing you do have control over. You don't have control over weather, topography, oxygen, or heat. You can use that. You can use the oxygen and heat to put the fire out, but you can't necessarily control it beforehand. So those are very basic graphics. That's pretty much all you need to know about the fire triangle and the fire behavior triangle. I'm going to recommend this one video, and in 12 minutes, you're going to see everything you need to see that we're going to test you on with fire. It's an outstanding video that I came across about a year ago, I think. It's just really well done. It talks about prescribed fire, wildfire, urban, wild and urban interface, political stuff as far as declaring emergencies. And so anyway, I highly recommend watching this video. It's a very interesting video, and it gives a lot of good information. So you do need to understand the difference between wildfire, prescribed fire, and the video covers that. So I don't want to spend time on it because they do a great job with that. Any questions on fire? A lot to cover here, so we're not going to go too deep. All right, last section is management and silviculture. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this graphic. You guys have a chance to look at it. Basically, there's 5 different kinds of silviculture or methods of growing trees that we want you to be somewhat familiar with. And so this graphic describes probably more than you need to know about each one, but kind of gives you a sense of what they are. Obviously, clear cut speaks for itself. Those are large areas that are cut. Basically, all trees are cut in that area. By law, there are 20 acres in California, no more than 20, although you can get exemptions to go up to 30. Group selection is a mini clear cut with up to 2.5 acres of a little clearing. Okay, that's a group of trees that are selected or harvested. So let's go to single tree selection. That's pretty inherent. One tree here, one tree there. It's a scattering, grabbing single trees as you want to do to meet the landowner goals. A seed tree is basically a clear cut, but a few trees are left that are really great trees to seed the surrounding ground, kind of a natural way of regenerating. And then shelter wood is where you cut some of the trees and you shelter the trees that are coming up underneath. And I think you would probably want to use that if you had shade tolerant species like fir and cedar, not shade intolerant species like pines. They might not do well as an understory in shelter. So next graphic, we're going to take a little quiz. Maybe we'll put this in next week. So we want to match the 5 types, and I wish you guys would unmute because I already know the answers to this, but maybe Steve can help us out. Steve's our co-student today. So let's see if we can figure out what's what. So what's easy, Steve? What's your first picture that you see that you think you can identify?
Letter C.
And what would that be?
That's seed tree.
Yeah, there you go. Just a bunch of good trees out there scattering their seeds. Okay, we got that one. Pick another one.
I could probably do one.
Okay.
How about B, clear cut?
Yep. Now, that is a clear cut. Why are there clumps of trees in the middle? That is becoming more of a thing, and it does provide some wildlife habitat. So, or maybe there's some structure there that's going to be good for wildlife. There may be a species, maybe there's a little clump, maybe there's a little riparian zone, there's a little spring or something where there's a different species and there's no reason to harvest that. So there's reasons to leave little bits of trees, but basically it's a large block of land, and that one you can see has been replanted, but some of the trees have been left there. Those are retention.
So I like to say that picture D,
Mm-hmm.
a little confusing because compared to letter B, you don't have an idea of the scale.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Letter D could also be a clear cut.
But it's small. You
Right.
see how small?
We don't know it's small because of the photo.
That's true. That's true. But it is small. That's the whole opening right there.
Right.
So any thoughts about what that might be? The mini clear cut.
So that'd be that would be the group selection.
That's right. So up to 2.5 acres by law in California. And yes, you are right. I have another overhead graphic, but it's like perfect little circles, and it's not really, it's a graphic. It's not really representative. That's an actual group selection. Okay, so there's 2 left. So any stabs at the other 2, A and E?
I saw Cameron unmute a minute ago. If you want to go ahead.
Cameron! Don't be shy.
I was thinking that maybe A was single tree selection since it's so far spread apart.
Well, there about half the canopy has been taken out to shelter smaller trees that you see underneath.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that one is
Shelter wood.
right. Okay, which leaves E. And the reason that E, you can see single tree selection, when you harvest and use that type of silviculture, it's almost like you can't tell that the forest has been harvested because there's just one tree here, one tree there. The volume isn't as high as a clear cut, but there's less disturbance for each entry. You're not completely changing the landscape. You're just plucking one here and one there. Okay. So yeah, so good job. Good try, Cameron. I appreciate you coming online and giving it a shot there.
That was my guess too, Cameron.
So yeah, but A is shelterwood. Shelterwood and sea tree are rarely used in California. B, D, and E are the ones that we use most. And that graphic on the previous page tells you how often they're used. Shows you. So anyway, those are important. We can represent those with sketches, not photographs. So anyway, I kind of gave away, I could have used this as a test question, but I like the pictures, so I thought that would be good practice. Okay, we are getting really close to being done here. In fact, that's about it. We've got 4 minutes left. I wanted to let you guys know I'm volunteering with the Envirothon, but what I really do is the Forestry Challenge. And if you are interested, if you enjoyed our talk today, if you like being out in the forest, we run 4 events, and you guys are closest to San Bernardino. So Cameron, did you go to the San Bernardino event 2019, or did you do virtual this year?
In 2019, I did the Santa Cruz one, and then this year I did virtual.
That's right. You guys went to Santa Cruz, which makes a good point. You can go to any event you want to. So there's one in Shasta, El Dorado, Santa Cruz, and San Bernardino. And the dates are on the website. This is the homepage of the website. We are now in our open period for pre-registration for the fall events. So Steve, I'm super hopeful that you will consider bringing a group of students to whichever event you'd like, although San Bernardino is really your closest.
Well, I mean, so what is the nature of is this like a competition, or is this a learning thing?
It is. It's a competition, and so it's based on forestry. So that's the same thing. There's a field test and there's a presentation. But what's different about the Forestry Challenge is we actually send the students out to collect a data set. So a landowner's got a situation, they want to know, should I harvest now? Are my trees overcrowded? You know, do I have fire danger? Whatever their issue is, whatever they're trying to figure out, we actually collect the data for them. And each student, and Cameron can tell you, you guys got thrown out thinking you did the piece on the camp property, right, Cameron?
Yeah, we went
Yep,
on.
your 1/10 acre plots, and we have a protocol. Everybody follows the protocol. The data set is collected and assembled and given back to the students to interpret. So, and plus there's a field test, which is worth 60% of the total score. The presentation is worth 40. And we had to go virtual last fall, which is why I'm helping, because we just went through all this. We just did a virtual event. So I've got some of the tools and tricks, and Chris is, of course, very much a part of that, making this happen virtually. But what I've linked to this video, to this image, is a 1-minute video on my program, and the website also under About tells you more. So if you just want to look at it for 1 minute, then that's the video to watch. What's linked to that video. And then pre-registration doesn't obligate you in any way. It's just a placeholder so we know you'd like to come. A team size can be any size. I don't care if you bring 7 kids and you have a team of 3 and a team of 4. I don't care. Bring kids, form teams, and go learn about the forest. Anyway, please check it out. That's, I mean, to be right up front with you, one of the reasons I'm involved with Envirothon is to try to spread awareness of what I'm doing, because it's a good counterpart, because it's in the fall. You can bring kids to that in the fall, they'll get more forestry knowledge, they'll ace that part in the spring and the fall. So, and there is a state competition afterwards for the teams that are the top. In fact, I think you guys, we were going to do a state event in 2020, and then COVID hit. So I believe that Granada Hills was invited to that event. That's where the top.
Yeah.
That's in Tuolumne County, Minnesota. You guys were all set to go, weren't you, Cameron?
Yeah, we got 3rd place, so that was exciting.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so please check it out. And with that, we are done. And actually, let me go back to the previous slide. There are contact information is there. If you have any questions, we're available. I will be basically in the office next week. I'll be in and out the week after, and I'll be in the office the week that the event is coming. So, and then Madeline will be doing the next workshop 2 weeks from today from noon to 1, and she's going to do a practice test.
So if you guys have, I was going to say, if you have any problem getting the Zoom link to anything, or if you know of any other teams or schools that don't have the Zoom link or don't know about it, please feel free to share. Please feel free to share my contact info so I can make sure that everybody who's interested in attending the last session gets the opportunity to. And then in a normal year, I've gone and provided, like, you know, some coaching for teams when they've requested it. Obviously, this is not a normal year, so Steve, other teachers, you know, if we can fit in any coaching, I will certainly do my best. I am not a forester by discipline, but I've had a lot of cross training. And then obviously I've been learning a lot from Diane. So I feel like I could at least help you guys get through some stuff. And I did want to add, I think I hinted at it before, there may be some more edits coming to the study resource website. So like Diane said, if you stick to sort of treat this PowerPoint as sort of a study guide, and then, you know, on the website, look at the resources that would only kind of take you to these, you know, topics, and consider the rest of it to just sort of be bonus information, but there may be continuing edits happening. So don't be concerned if you see something that's there now, pop away, disappear. It's all intentional, and it's all guided by Diane and myself trying to make it as streamlined and, you know, useful for y'all as possible.
Honestly, bottom line, look at the PowerPoint, look at the links there, you'll be fine.
Exactly.
We are not going to make this too hard because you have a lot to do, and we're just glad you're here. I mean, it's Saturday of May. Everything is happening. Finals, graduation, prom, whatever is going on, or not, but you got stuff to do. So, you know, we are just going to ask you to learn the things that we really want you to know. And if we don't really want you to know it, don't learn it, as far as we're concerned, unless you just have extra time on your hands, which many of us have.
Not where will the PowerPoint or the PDF show up?
I'll probably just email it to you.
Okay.
I'll email it to you and Wendy. I don't have the other. There's another teacher from a school in San Diego. I don't know this person, so but I'll request that it be sent out.
Would the recording of the Zoom be available too?
You know what I'll do is I'll post it on our website.
Okay.
I'll link it, and then they can grab the link if they want. It'll probably not be a public link. You have to know the link will be on our YouTube page. We'll probably put a few privacy filter on it, but you know, if you've got the link, you'll be able to view it. So yeah. So now, are you even in class these days, or are you 100% virtual?
We are currently 100% virtual, but in a couple of weeks, kids who want to show up can.
Okay.
Starting on May 10th, and I don't really know what that's going to look like. It was just told like a couple of days ago that that's going to happen. So it'll be interesting.
And honestly, I recommend that when you do the presentation, especially, do not have all the students in one room. It just, you can't see them. They're standing 10 feet away. There's this screen with a projection. It's the daylight gets in the way. just everybody going, even I had one school this fall that they were all on campus. And I said, go to your own, everybody go to a different classroom and get on a computer. Because then you can see the person's face, you can share the slide, it's clear to see, much better way to do it. If you're gonna be remote, everybody gets their own screen and have one person sharing. Now on my website, you'll see an example where you'll see the top presentation from our fall events. We had about, I think we had 229 students and probably about 50 teams, maybe 60, and that's only about half of what we normally do in a standard year. So our events generally have between 25 and 30 teams, about 100 students per. Where our program is huge. The other thing I was going to mention, what was I going to mention? Anyway, just go to the website and we'll make sure that we post somewhere this will be available. We'll make sure you have a link to that. It probably will happen on Monday. My assistant is coming in on Monday. She's our person that does that. So, yeah, and then I'll email you this power. It's going to be a PDF. And again, it's no big deal. It's the same difference. Just hover over the images, right click, and it'll say open in the browser. And that you'll get to all the resources out there. Okay. Okay, you know what? I was in my brain was thinking we only had 1 hour, or that it was going to be done at 11. It's 11:05. It's a beautiful day. If you guys don't have any further questions, I think we've done everything that we are here to do today.
This was good. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. So Cameron and Chris, just I don't have your email addresses. I don't need to have them necessarily, but I will email this PDF to Wendy, and you can ask her to forward it to you. How's that sound? All right, Cameron?
Yes.
Hello?
Looks like Chris typed in, okay, thank you.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I didn't see that. Perfect. Okay, so that's it. And I don't see any point in us sitting around for another hour when there's a day to be had out there. So, all right. So thanks for your time this morning. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Email Madeline or myself anytime. My phone number's on the website. You can call me. I don't care. If my phone is, if I'm awake, my phone's on, and that's oftentimes till the wee hours. So lean on me. Just, I know what I was going to say. If you pre-register for the Forestry Challenge, in the fall, we will, if you request a forester to be connected to your school, we will find one. And that forester will be available to come to campus, talk to the students, go over some of the stuff, show them the tools, practice some of this. And then when you get to the Forestry Challenge, we spend the first full half day just doing training, just practicing with the tools. Because by the time we send them out Thursday afternoon, it's a 3-night, 4-day event. By the time they go out in the afternoon to collect the data, we want them to know how to do that. So all that is covered on site or in person at the event. But we have resources online, and we will send a forester to your school, so choose. And then all our registration, if you pre-register before the end of June, it's 50% discount.